What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video, back with the final off-season video of the 2024 season. We do have a mock draft Monday tomorrow, but the real last piece of content of the season, I figure we just go through the draft and talk about all of my favorite picks at each position at different points of the draft. Who are my favorite people to draft? Whatever rankings you use, I would pull them out and just kind of highlight these players. I'm not saying you have to draft all of them. You can't. We're going to draft or talking about like 25 different players in this video. But just highlight them knowing that like these are guys I really like. If possible, get as many of them on your team as you can. So we'll start off with quarterback. And we'll start with Patrick Mahomes as well. Allen is fine. Hurts is fine. I just like the value of Patrick Mahomes just a little bit more. He's been the quarterback 1, 6, 2, 5, 3, and 14 in points per game. Last season, everything just kind of went wrong for Mahomes. We saw the touchdown rate drop. Interception rate went up. We're seeing, yards per pass attempt dropping. And it really was just because everyone they surrounded him with was not very good besides Travis Kelce and then second half of the year for Rashee Rice. They just didn't really have any talented players, and especially downfield. They basically had to rely on, Watson to hopefully get open downfield. We know that Justin Watson's not that great of a player. They're going to have exceptional deep threats this season. Xavier Worthy, fastest player in the NFL. They've got Hollywood, who probably won't open the season healthy, but that's fine. He'll be healthy relatively early in the season. I wouldn't worry about that too much. They've just got the weapons back. This is Patrick Mahomes. I've said in previous videos, I think he can break the passing record this season. It's not like I think that Xavier Worthy is Tyreek Hill. I don't think that anyone on this team can be what Tyreek Hill was to this offense. But we've seen the year after they lost Tyreek Hill, he still threw for 5,250 yards. It's just that last season, a lot of things went wrong. The team just wasn't as good offensively. And that was in large part because they didn't have anyone that could stretch the field. Now they have two of those players. And honestly, getting a full season of Rashee Rice, which we think is going to happen. I don't think the suspension is going to happen this season. That's another player in the middle of the field. So if you're wondering like, should we worry about Kelce? Not really. Like Kelce even declining, well, Rashee Rice is also going to pick it up in the middle of the field. So they're still going to have that short area, intermediate area taken care of, deep threats downfield. Mahomes is just an exceptional pick. If you miss out on Mahomes, who I've said, if I had to draft one team this year, of course I've drafted many teams, but if I was only drafting one, and it was for a ton of money, big buy-in, I would draft Anthony Richardson. So if you miss out on Mahomes, Richardson's who I'd go after. Most athletic quarterback in NFL history. People have pushed back on that and been like, Lamar Jackson's a quarterback, right? You understand that Anthony Richardson is a little bit faster than Lamar Jackson, and he weighs like 30 pounds more. Like he is an absolute athletic freak. He's paired with a great coach for quarterback play. Think about Gardner Minshew, right? Gardner Minshew won the job for the Raiders this season because he wasn't horrific, right? Like Aiden O'Connell was just terrible. And they're like, okay, Minshew, can you go out there and be half competent? And he was like, not really half competent. He wasn't that good, but they're like, well, I guess you're better than Aiden O'Connell. So it's not like he's an amazing quarterback. I don't think he's bad, but Minshew's not an amazing quarterback. Their coaching staff with JT hurt for the year, losing Anthony Richardson, not having AD Mitchell yet, Downs injured for a chunk of the year. They had Gardner Minshew running things, and they were like one play away from making the playoffs. Like, this is a great coaching staff they have, great game planning. They got the most they possibly could have out of Gardner Minshew last season with Anthony Richardson. I mean, the tush push is going to be a thing for them this year, I'm anticipating. He's got the potential to run for 15 to 17 touchdowns. He's going to run for a ton of yards on top of that, and he's got a cannon for an arm, and they have deep threats. He's going to be more than willing to chuck the ball deep downfield. I love Richardson this season. It's a super small sample last year, but I mean, when you're averaging 29.9 fantasy points per 4 quarters, number 1 in the NFL in fantasy points per dropback, like we can see if he stays healthy, he's going to absolutely dominate. And in hometown leagues, it doesn't hurt you that much if he happens to get injured, especially in a 10 or a 12 team hometown league. You know what? He gets hurt. You look on free agency and you're like, okay, well, Kirk Cousins is still there. And like, oh, someone dropped Trevor Lawrence. And like, there's going to be options. Drake May at one point is going to be the starting quarterback. He's going to be mobile. He's going to have some fantasy points we can take advantage of. Like, there will be options for you if there's an injury. And if there's not an injury, he's a league winner. Then finally, miss out on those two. I would go after Jordan Love. Just so safe. It's like a lot of people think about Dak Prescott this season. Okay. If CeeDee Lamb gets hurt, what is Dak going to do? You think about a lot of these high-end quarterbacks, and it's like, if their number one guy goes down, Jamar Chase doesn't sign for the Bengals. Like, obviously, we're going to like look at that and be like, well, that's a big downgrade, of course, for Joe Burrow. You look at Love and take anyone out. Take one of the tight ends out. Take a running back out. Take a wide receiver out. It doesn't even matter. Like, they just have so many good players that he's kind of like safe in terms of like anyone can really get hurt on the team and it's not going to impact him. And then for him, he's like perfectly mobile, right? Like, he's not hyper mobile in that he's going to run for a ton of yards, take a ton of hits, and increase his injury risk like Anthony Richardson. But he's going to take the yards that are there. He's going to take the rushing touchdowns that are there. But he's going to get down. He's going to go out of bounds. He's going to slide. And he's just not going to take that many hits. And so he gets you enough on the ground to raise his ceiling, but not so much on the ground where he's going to elevate his risk a ton. So a very safe pick. He's kind of the tail end of that quarterback to where it's like, I said I want a top 11 quarterback this season. If you start getting to Jordan Love, we're at that quarterback 9-10 range. It's basically Love and then it's Jaden Daniels. Both are great options. They're kind of at the end of what I want, so I would be focusing on them if you don't have a quarterback. Running back, Jonathon Taylor. Great pick this season. Some people are definitely concerned about him because, I said I think Anthony Richardson could run for 15 to 17 touchdowns. Well, that's a problem, right? Because those are 15 to 17 rushing touchdowns that Jonathon Taylor is not going to have. And it's not in a way where it's like, oh, wow, like, is he going to have like 3 touchdowns? Like, they're just going to run for a lot of touchdowns. So some of these Richardson touchdowns would have been passing. They turned in to rushing. So it's not necessarily taking all from Jonathon Taylor. But also, it's going to play like 85-90% of the snaps. Or maybe the snap share is slightly lower than that, but the touch share is going to be insane. Like, he's probably going to have the number 1 touch share of any running back in the NFL. We haven't necessarily seen the upside like this last season, but remember what he did in year 2. 372 touches, nearly 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns at 22 years old. He's still very young. He's a phenomenal running back. He's going to get all the touches he can handle. He can go to 350, 375 touches. At that point, does it truly matter that maybe he can't score 20 touchdowns? Maybe with Anthony Richardson, he's only scoring 12, 13 touchdowns. If you're going to have 350 touches to go along with 12 or 13 touchdowns, you're going to be an exceptional pick at the running back position, especially because historically he's cost us a top 5 pick. Typically, tail end of the first round into round 2. I think he's a phenomenal player. If you want to go running back, and you want to pair him with the running back I'll talk about in a second, or Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not mentioning Jahmyr Gibbs in this video, but I think he's a great pick. If you want to go Gibbs, JT. If you want to go JT, Achane, who we're going to talk about in a second. Usually you can get better value on Achane, so hopefully you don't have to go in the early second round. But the point is, if you can go JT and another running back and then just like overload wide receiver, quarterback, tight end in the middle rounds, that's a great strategy. Or you know what, maybe one of A.J. Brown or Garrett Wilson is there in round 1. Maybe you get JT at the tail end or the tail end of round 1 into round 2. Like, there's a bunch of possibilities to where, like, again, usually he costs you a top 5 pick, and now you're looking at the tail end of round 2, and so he's got to be that true guy. You can have another great pick. You get him in the second round. Like, he's a great pick this season because the touches are so locked in. Achane, we alluded to. A lot of people are off on Achane, especially on ESPN. The ADP is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you can get Achane in round 3, you slam that every single time. Even at like the tail end of round 2, he's a phenomenal pick. He probably should be going in the mid-range of round 2. I was off him a little bit to start the offseason because, I mean, there are genuine concerns. Like, it's not like people are, wrong, right? When they say that, like, Mostert had 1 million touchdowns last season and he's still very good. So he's still probably getting a lot of touches. And, Jalen Wright is a very good prospect. And, Achane is a little bit of a smaller back. So maybe he can't hold up because we saw him get hurt last season, get hurt a little bit in this offseason. Like, there are concerns here. What I always go back to is levels of efficiency. Whenever we have seen a running back reach high levels of efficiency like this, and, fantasy points over expectation, if we're looking at that as a metric, whenever someone is as efficient as Achane was, 100% of the time, they have seen an increase their volume in year 2. Coaches are going to look at this and they're not going to be like, well, 7.8 yards per carry is nice, but what can this other rookie do? Like, no, you're going to keep giving him the ball. And as a rookie, maybe they didn't think you could handle it. Maybe he wasn't, he's a rookie, right? He's not going to be fully aware of the system. In year 2, we are expecting a much bigger game plan for him. but then also in the receiving game. I think people are underrating how good he's going to be as a receiver. We talk all the time about receivers lining up, or running backs lining up in the slot, out wide. It never really happens unless it's Achane. He's actually going to play in the slot as a wide receiver. They're going to get him onto the field a ton, screen passes, end arounds, any way they can get him the ball. So no, he's not going to have 25 touches per game, but he could be the running back 1 overall by a good chunk on 20. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but the level of efficiency of this offense is absolutely insane. He had 11.8 touches per game last season, and he was the running back 4 in points per game. Like, he can crush it on very limited touches. He's a great pick, especially if you can get him in round 3. Derrick Henry. This is another one where I love it in round 2. You're probably not going to get Henry in round 3. I don't know any format. Maybe in full PPR if people push him back a little bit, but I mean, he's just a freak. And I understand the age, but we're talking about a kid who had the best high school career we've ever seen, one of the best college careers we've ever seen, one of the best NFL careers we've ever seen. It's like basically every time he steps onto a football field, he's just been an absolute outlier. And when players are as big of outliers as Derrick Henry is, you can kind of be like, okay, if anyone is going to remain efficient deeper into their career, it might be someone who's been the best we've ever seen. And there wasn't a drop-off. That's the thing. If we've seen a drop-off in recent years, I'd be like, okay, maybe pump the brakes. But he had the second most rushing yards after contact last year behind Christian McCaffrey. The problem was the Titans' offensive line was so bad, he was just always being hit immediately. And he was still good. That's the thing. We just look at the upgrade we're having here, and it's like, normally, I've said this so many times this season, but it just blows my mind. 5 years ago, if you had Derrick Henry, not saying like 5 years ago for Derrick Henry, like if we just like transported this season to 5 years ago, and we were like, oh, Derrick Henry, one of the greatest running backs of all time, is going to one of, if not the best rushing offenses that we've seen in recent years. Like, maybe you could argue that Miami's better. Maybe you could argue San Fran's better, but like Baltimore's basically a best case scenario landing spot where all of this value, this hyper efficiency is going to come on the ground. All of this red zone work is going to be on the ground for running backs on this team. It's like, this is what you dream of, to be getting him easily in round 2, pretty much no matter where you are from pick like 7 through 12. If you want to take him in round 2, like your next pick, you can basically do it at any one of those picks. We've never seen an opportunity like this. I think that he's going to have 20 touchdowns this season. I think he's going to be an absolute monster. Remember, he's the most game script dependent running back in NFL history. That doesn't mean he's not a good running back. It just means when they win, he is a monster. Scoring over 22 fantasy points per game, that drops down to 12 in losses. But no team's projected to win more than Baltimore this year. They're going to be up, going to be scoring touchdowns, and it's going to be through Derrick Henry. Jacobs, another running back. Love him this season. Everything's going his way recently, though. I mean, like, A.J. Dillon, done for the year. Marshawn Lloyd, done for the first 4 weeks. So it's Jacobs, and it's Emmanuel Wilson, and it's no one else right now. We do need to remember, he's still 26 years old. He had 2,000 yards 2 years ago. One down year, then a team signs him on a 4-year, $48 million deal. All their other running backs get injured, and it's like one of the best offenses in football is going to basically feature him for the first part of the season. And remember that year for the 2,000-yard year on the Raiders. They were planning on using Zamir White that year. They were like, we like Zamir White. We're going to get him onto the field. And then Jacobs was so good and was just so in shape, I guess, as well. They were just like, we can't really bring him off the field. He's just so good. We want to get this other guy touches, but we can't. That could happen this year for the Packers. And if it does, we could be looking at 15 to 17 touchdowns. We can be looking at north of 1,700 total yards because he's going to be very involved in the receiving game. Everyone wants to crown Marshawn Lloyd as the next Aaron Jones, but he didn't even practice basically this summer. And realistically, he needs to develop into that. I just don't see it happening this year for Marshawn Lloyd. I think he's going to have more opportunity now with A.J. Dillon gone, but it's like, Jacobs is such an amazing pick and get him in round 3 every time as well. Amazing values at running back this season. Moving later, I think Jonathan Brooks and Chuba, I talked about in like the video, 2 days ago, yesterday. Don't need to go over them too much, but it's the combination. You can definitely just draft Brooks or just draft Chuba, but I think they're very powerful as a combination right now. Brooks, of course, going on the IR to start the season. Going to miss at least the first 4 games. Probably going to miss the first, we'll say 5 to 6, or at least being ramped up 5, 6, 7. So you're probably not going to be able to use him until week 8. My whole thing is you're getting a huge discount on him because of that. And then Chuba still honestly goes probably too late given how much he's going to be used to start the season. So just draft both of them. You have no risk. You don't care at all when Brooks comes back. If he happens to never return this season, your Chuba pick was absolutely incredible, and that's going to more than make up for the Brooks pick. And if he comes back in week 9, week 10, he's featured from week 12 on, okay, you've got a feature running back to start the season, maybe a few weeks where you don't know what you're doing, and then you start Brooks the rest of the season, and it didn't really cost you all that much. In the draft, it certainly didn't cost you running back 2 value, and I think it returns running back 1 value. So I would definitely draft both of them if you can. Moving later, I love Jaleel McLaughlin. I have been really, really upping him in the rankings. I finalized the rankings, by the way, so if you're watching this, they're final. You can print them off. You can use the custom rankings and not have to keep going back and seeing if they've been updated. But I've moved him up a ton in recent weeks just because I'm gaining more confidence in the situation. We know that Sean Payton loves to target running backs. He has done it every single season that he's ever coached. He did it last year. They targeted running backs the highest rate in the NFL. They're going to throw to running backs. Then you have Bo Nix, who historically has thrown to running backs. And so it's a perfect pairing there. You look at the running backs and you're like, okay, Javonte Williams is going to get his. He's going to get plenty of receptions, but they have so much to go around. The other running back is Estime. And so unless they're going to still use Blake Watson, which I don't think they're going to do, and especially if you see in week 1, Estime is active over Blake Watson, it's wheels up for McLaughlin. Easy, passing down back, third down back, and he's going to mix in. People all the time talk about, they're like, oh, he's not big enough to handle workload. Do you understand what Jaleel McLaughlin did in college? He was literally the best running back in college football history. He had 8,166 rushing yards, 79 rushing touchdowns. He can handle a workload. He had over 8,000 rushing yards in college. He has Alvin Kamara level upside this season, and he goes super late in drafts. We finally know who the backup is for McCaffrey. It's Jordan Mason, and he was getting a ton of hype last summer, but we kind of knew, we were okay, you can get this hype, but it's Elijah Mitchell's always there, and he's going to take this workload. They trust Elijah Mitchell. And then that kind of happened. He got some run during the season, but it was McCaffrey's there, Elijah Mitchell's there. You can't get that much run. This offseason, he was pushing Mitchell, and now we have Mitchell done for the year. And we look at all the hype last year, combined with the hype this summer, how well he played in the preseason. He was awesome in the preseason. I truly think they're actually going to spell McCaffrey. I think they're actually going to give Jordan Mason consistent touches each week, just like they used to do with Elijah Mitchell, and then the injury. If there's an injury, they do not trust these rookie running backs that they've drafted this year and who have basically not practiced in camp as well. Mason would be featured, and he'd be in the Christian McCaffrey role, obviously getting less receptions than him. But if you draft McCaffrey, you have to reach multiple rounds ahead to get Mason. It's a must. You have to do it. And even if you don't, you do that to someone else, right? Reach multiple rounds ahead, grab them. Either that person that drafted McCaffrey is going to trade you a ton to get him, or you're just going to hold, get some value while McCaffrey's healthy. And if McCaffrey goes down, you have everyone would spend 100% of their fab to get him. Get that onto your roster. Wide receivers up next. Round 1, favorite wide receiver is Garrett Wilson. I'm just all in. I just love Garrett Wilson this season. I think he can have a peak DeVonta Adams-like season. He is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Amazing success rates against man coverage, press coverage. I know that Mike Williams is doing team drills now. He's going to be out there in week 1, not 100%, but he's going to be out there. Mike Williams, that's not really a threat. They just play such different roles. Mike Williams is going to stretch defenses. He's going to be used as a deep threat. He's not someone who's going to consistently beat man coverage. That's not what Mike Williams is. Still a good receiver, but it's not what Mike Williams is. That's what Garrett Wilson is, and that's what Aaron Rodgers loves. Aaron Rodgers loves players like Garrett Wilson who just consistently get open, beat man coverage, shred in routes, and it's just Wilson has been amazing. Awesome at getting open, both shallow and deep downfield. He's just been playing with the worst quarterback play you could possibly dream up. Now he's going to get a hyper-efficient quarterback, a quarterback that knows defenses. That's also important, right? The quarterbacks he's had have not been able to diagnose defenses. So they've been throwing into coverages where they should not be throwing the ball. They've not been able to figure out what's going to be open. Aaron Rodgers is going to do that, and he's going to set them up in position to succeed every single play. And so Wilson not only will just get open on his own, now he's going to be schemed open. They're going to move in position to get him open. Then he's going to get open, and Rodgers is going to find him, and he's going to be amazing. So he's going to be exceptional this season. Again, an amazing start would be like pairing him with one of these high-end running backs, or if you want to go running back, you can do that. But like, I'm willing to like push that aside to get Garrett Wilson or A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown's great as well in the late first round. When we go back to wide receiver, so maybe we go Garrett Wilson. Maybe we grab one of these running backs in round 2. Late third round, I've seen him go into the 4th round. Cooper Kupp. I think he is an amazing pick this season. Breaks fantasy in 2021. Breaks fantasy in the first half of 2022. Then he has a high ankle sprain. Goes into last season, injured. And I understand the concern. There is an older wide receiver. Puka broke out. Like, can he stay healthy? It's okay targeting players who might get injured because all that matters in redraft is league winners, right? Like, basically, if you're not a league winner, you're a filler. That's kind of all that it is. I mean, there's a handful of players who have this insane value added where the majority of teams that make the playoffs, that advance in the playoffs, have, a group of like 10 players, let's say. So if you don't have one of them, it's okay. You need a lot of other players, but it's okay to miss, right? It's okay to miss a little bit early on in search of those players, because if you just hit a bunch of singles, you're just not going to get enough return to really make a difference. And Cooper Kupp is someone who no one would be shocked if he finishes as the number 1 wide receiver in all of fantasy this season. He was hurt last year. And again, I understand that's a risk, but think about this. He was the most valuable player in all of fantasy by a mile in 2021. Then he was the most valuable player in all of fantasy by a mile in 2022. Then he gets hurt. And now we're here. So if he just stays healthy, he's going to have a great role. People have talked a lot about how he could be the 1A over Puka this season. I think it's going to flip-flop a lot. But if it's going to flip-flop a lot and Puka goes in round 1, why does Kupp go in round 4? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, he's such a good pick this year. Nico Collins. If Cooper Kupp makes you queasy, take Nico. Instead, you're gonna have to take Nico a little bit earlier. It doesn't fall as much. But I think the reason he's going a little bit later is that people aren't convinced that he's amazing, but he is. I mean, he ranks in the 94th percentile versus man, 96th percentile versus press. He was incredible last season. I understand that, like, I've talked a lot about Tank Dell. I love Tank Dell too. I just love this whole offense because I think, CJ Stroud is legit. I think he's awesome. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton. They're going to be highly efficient. No one's going to be able to take anyone away because what are you going to do? Double team Nico and you're going to leave Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell open? Like, you can't do that. So everyone's seeing a bunch of single coverage. No one's getting help over the top. And it's like, Nico's the one you want because he's their X receiver. And in the Houston offense, the X receiver is super important. But there's just so much upside in this offense in general. Lock up Nico Collins. I'd be fine if you wanted to go Nico Collins and Tank Dell. The one that I haven't drafted a lot is Stephon Diggs, just because we do have some tracking data that said he fell off a little bit last season. He's going to be in more of like that low ADOT role, which is fine. He's going to have weeks where he racks up a lot of receptions for you. But if he's not getting deeper downfield where they're using Tank Dell, they're using Nico Collins, it lends itself to a lot of good weeks. But I want the spikes. I want the big weeks that can really like win you a championship, win you a week. And that's what Nico Collins provides. So exceptional pick this season. After Nico, we've got Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers on Underdog got a little bit ridiculous going at pick like 20. Like, that's kind of early. But in most redraft leagues, Malik Nabers is going late enough to where it's kind of ridiculous. In the preseason, he's got like north of a 30% target share. Like, there's no one else to throw to. I like Wan'Dale as a player. I think Hyatt has some upside, but like Hyatt's a deep threat. Wan'Dale is a schemed usage player, right? These are gadget players. These are players you give a couple looks a game. They don't really have a running back that's going to command a significant workload through the air. They don't really have a tight end that's going to do that. It's going to be Nabers every play, on screen passes, across the middle of the field, deep downfield. He's going to have a huge target share. Is he going to be consistent? Probably not. So he doesn't deserve to be a top 2 round pick, but he deserves to be a 3rd round pick, and there's some places we can get him in the 5th round. Like, it's just, he's going to fall in your hometown leagues. People are not going to want to pay a premium for him. He is an amazing player. You just got to understand that, yes, it's Daniel Jones. Yes, it's the Giants. But if he has a 28% target share, you're not going to care who's throwing those targets. That's going to be enough to get it done. DeVonta Smith, after that. I don't really know why he's going as late as he is in a lot of platforms. He's proven that he's a great player. I don't know that he's like a true alpha number one, but he's so much better than a lot of people thought. Like, people looked at his size. He was like 6 foot, 170 entering the league. People were like, can't do it. Like, he can't get it done, even though he was exceptional in college. He's proven he's a great receiver. Kellen Moore, the debate is still out if he's actually like a good offensive coordinator from like an NFL standpoint, but for fantasy, they're going to play fast. They're going to throw the ball a ton. And people point out, they're like, oh, they did that last year, right? Well, number one, DeVonta Smith was good last year. Like, he's been good in every year of his career. But number two, you can always get faster and you can always throw the ball more. And that's what's going to happen under Kellen Moore this season. Another thing, Jalen Hurts was hurt last year. Like, he was limited with the injury. Like, if he's not hurt this year and we're like increasing that efficiency and also increasing the pace and increasing the passing level, like, pass attempts are going to really go up. The efficiency of those attempts is going to go up. We're another year into the system for DeVonta Smith, another year into the NFL, developing as a player. It's just so locked in. Like, I guess like maybe he doesn't have the upside to be like a top 3 wide receiver, but there's not that many wide receivers who actually have top 3 upside. He easily has like top 7, top 8 upside. And there's a chance he's used kind of in that like CeeDee Lamb role where they're kind of moving him in and out from the slot, giving him more of those layup routes. I don't know, man. I mean, DeVonta Smith is such a sick pick this season. Then you've got kind of a trio, honestly. Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin, Diontae Johnson. You're not going to be able to get all of them, although I actually have seen some of your teams who have been able to get them. You kind of want to play ADP game here. I believe Ridley, Godwin, Diontae is like kind of how they go. I view them very similarly, but again, you want to play the ADP game. So even if you kind of prefer one of them a little bit more, if there's a 15 pick gap, well, you're more likely to get that player who's ranked 15 spots later if you take the first one and then the next one. And so many people comment and they're like, the ADP game doesn't matter. It's not a thing. Just draft the best players. That's not true. Like, even if you're correct, right? Let's say you think Diontae is better than Calvin Ridley. Like, if you have a player ranked 21, another player ranked 22, sometimes you have to take the player you have ranked 22 and then the player 21 instead of taking player 21, 22 coming off the board, and you're stuck with player 28. Right? Like, you still want to optimize as many good picks as possible. So that's what the ADP game is. It's not just all the time taking the worst player. It's just when you recognize there's an opportunity to get a player a little bit later on, you can get that player plus someone else that's better as well. It's just better than always taking the top player in the rankings, always reaching, and just getting a worse team than you could. But again, this trio is awesome. Calvin Ridley, I just don't think people understand how fast or how many pass attempts really are going to come from Tennessee this season. This offense has historically played super slow, super run heavy. That doesn't lead to a lot of pass attempts. This season, they're going to speed it up, they're going to throw it more, and they're going to stink, so they're going to be behind a lot of games, so they're going to have to throw it even more. So pass attempts going to be way up for the Titans. Calvin Ridley's going to benefit from that a lot. Chris Godwin, potentially playing the Cooper Kupp role in the offense this season, because of course they have the old coordinator from the Rams literally mentioning the Cooper Kupp role for Chris Godwin, moving him back into the slot. I'll take that every day of the week. And then Diontae Johnson, you'll want the X receiver and the running back of a Dave Canales offense. Ask Mike Evans, ask Rachaad White how involved the X receiver and the running backs are in a Dave Canales offense. Dave Canales is going to turn this team around. They're not going to go out there and win 10 games. They're not going to be a top 10 offense, but they're going to utilize their best players. Bryce Young's going to look way better this season, and the volume that we're going to see to Diontae Johnson is going to be incredible. Tight ends. Close things off. I want a top 7 tight end. There are late options, right? If you want to take a shot on Noah Fant late. You want to take a super late shot on Tucker Kraft, right? You want to take a shot on Conklin. I think Conklin's a perfectly fine pick to make. He's been falling a lot in ADP as well, but I think he can be, focused on by Aaron Rodgers a lot this season. But my main focus would be that tight end. So when I talk about draft strategy this season, and I talk about, locking up a running back in the first 2 rounds, getting one of them, and maybe 2 running backs in the first 3. And when I say overload wide receiver, quarterback 10 in the middle rounds, I mean it, right? Like, I mean, I want to go after Mahomes. I want to go after Anthony Richardson as one of my mid-round picks. But I want to have the ability to do that. So I got to take a running back early on because I can't get to round 7 with no running back. So we got to take a running back early or take 2 running backs early, grab some wide receivers, grab someone like Patrick Mahomes, like Anthony Richardson, and then go after Mark Andrews, go after Dalton Kincaid, go after Kyle Pitts. Honestly, you can throw McBride in there as well. You could throw Kittle in there as well. If you happen to have to wait and grab Ferguson, grab Njoku, they're fine too. It's just not a year where I want to exit that range. I don't really want Brock Bowers. I don't want Dalton Schultz, Pat Freiermuth. Like, all these guys are going to do absolutely nothing. Get a good tight end. We're good enough at drafting to figure out the rest of our draft. If we happen to miss on a middle pick for like running back or wide receiver, we know some running backs later on. We know some wide receivers later on. They're going to be okay. We don't know that any tight ends this season are going to compete with this top end. So again, I like Andrews, Kincaid, and Pitts mostly because of the ADP value. We know that Andrews historically, I mean, he's been a tight end 4, 4, 1, 3, and 4 in points per game over the last couple of years. Like, he's a perfectly fine age for a tight end. Like, we just know he's going to be good, right? We know he's going to be good. We know that with Dalton Kincaid, there's 317 targets available on this Buffalo Bills offense. He's going to fill a lot of them. 55+% of their red zone targets are available. He's going to take over a lot of that. He had the 4th most receptions ever for rookie tight end last season. He can have 100 receptions, 10 plus touchdowns this year. And then Kyle Pitts, I know people don't like him. I understand that. It's going to be such a better offense. They're going to be more aggressive deep downfield. That's a plus for Kyle Pitts. They're going to play faster. Plus, they're going to throw the ball more. Plus, the target's going to be way more efficient. Plus, it's like everything is getting better, and he's healthy. He's been injured the last few seasons, and remember, he's super young. I always bring up this stat, and people hate it, but we need to understand that Travis Kelce had his first catch in the NFL at 24 and a half years old. Like, tight ends don't pull Sam Laporta's. Like, it just doesn't happen that often. It takes them a while to get going. Kyle Pitts has not turned 24 yet. Like, he's still exceptionally young. He's still developing as a player. I think this is the year where he finally puts it all together. I'd be perfectly fine targeting him as well. So, I don't know how many players that was, but it was a ton of players that are my favorite in drafts. If you want to see my exact rankings on every player that, again, I have finalized my final list of rankings, see it on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. If you want a cheaper way to get it, all you do is sign up for your first Underdog account today using promo code FFA, make a minimum $10 deposit. The following morning, you will get access to my website and you'll have all the rankings, both for the draft and in season, along with any like pick'em stuff I do for Underdog. But again, if you need the rankings that day, you've got to sign up through the website. That'll get you instant access. So leave a like for the final offseason video besides the mock draft Monday. Tomorrow, this final like actual piece of content for the offseason. Next week, we're going to be hitting week 1 on Wednesday and Sunday, the Wednesday and Sunday videos for week 1 next week. That, my friends, is in this one. And thanks for watching.